You're watching Behind the Sidelines, your one-stop shop for understanding the forces at play behind the sports you watch. I'm Pacchia.
And I'm Steve Olenick, and today we have a very special guest, Pat Tully, world-famous auctioneer and former crisis management professional. Thanks, Pat.
Thanks for having me, guys.
A ton is going on in sports right now. Individuals, teams. How would you break it down? What would you do?
I guess you got to pick the sport and the problem, but I think the hot spot right now for everyone is the NFL. And from what's happening from the commissioner's office up top to the individual teams, down to the actual players, management, and to their public relations representative, if they even have that kind of representative.
Right.
Yeah, let's drill down on the recent events in the NFL. We have this recent rash of players involved in some pretty ugly domestic violence incidents, and the teams in league have been handling these situations in really an awful way. I mean, I'm trying to pick my words carefully here because this has just been an absolute fiasco. The fans, the public, and now recently we're seeing criticism from Nike and Budweiser, the sponsors. Everyone's really upset. How does one make sense of such a catastrophic mishandling of issues like these?
I guess you take the one that was really shocking more than anything, and when the video comes out of Ray Rice actually physically assaulting his girlfriend and seeing it. The problem that people started having right away was, well, what did you think happened? You saw him dragging her out by her hair or her feet, and that violent nature right there. But I mean, I guess it's like, if this was a murder investigation, did you have to see the tape of him stabbing her 18 times? If you heard he stabbed her 18 times, which,
Right.
I mean, you saw how violent that was. It's like,
right, and
really
it's a problem because initially they suspended Rice for 2 games, and then the video came out and they said, oh, it's much worse, we didn't realize. Now we're going to go with an indefinite suspension, I think is the way that they termed it. It doesn't look great from an optics point of view when you get it so wrong the first time out. How do you catch up from making an initial mistake like that? Had the NFL come close to the mark in your view?
And do you think Roger Goodell should resign?
Well, if I was him and being in that position, I would do everything to fight for my job, and he has the support of many of the owners still. That may have changed days later with all the developments and other stories and other players acting out and other situations happening. Now there's a Brandon Marshall situation that's developing right now, and then people like Reggie Bush just not being able to control what they're saying. It's unbelievable. When this is such a hot button issue and people are talking about Adrian Peterson and the situation and these allegations that what he did to his child and perhaps a second child of his as well. And then you've got another player in the league who plays the same position as him coming out and has a child himself and saying that this is something that he wouldn't condone the bruises, but would condone the the discipline of children if they got out of line. And it's just, even if that is your thought,
Let me ask you this.
keep it to yourself.
Social media, Twitter, you think it's good for situations like this?
Well, there's 2 parts of it. There's the person who says something immediately on Twitter, then how people react.
Right.
So I could say, isn't it a beautiful day outside? And some stranger on Twitter could come back and say, what would you know? And say something ridiculously inappropriate to me. Now, you should just completely ignore that. But then people start to reacting to that. It's kind of like you don't read the bottom half of the internet, right? You don't read, somebody puts a restaurant review up there, and you don't read what somebody else puts in and say a random comment about how the steak was or whatever. But it comes from the individual has to have enough self-control to realize that what Twitter really is. It's a microblog. So what are you blogging about? Are you blogging about these ridiculous off-color jokes? Are you blogging about what happened to a fellow teammate of yours? It comes from the user, and they control the content. And then what other people say back to them, they should just completely ignore. But I would just stay away from controversy. If I was advising a player on should I even have a Twitter account, I would say, well, what do you like to do after 11 o'clock at night? Are you still out at night? I'd leave the phone at home, because that seems to be the time where people want to make ridiculous comments, and they're like, oh, I have 5,000 Twitter followers. I would like to say something ridiculous about this woman who's sitting across from me at the club. Just leave the thing at home, or don't do it at all.
So let's channel the league's perspective here for a moment. If you're a fly on the wall in the war room there, what do you tell them?
Well, say, guys, what did we really know? At this point, there's a lot of people who feel there's a cover-up. There's a lot of people who are just rolling their eyes from Keith Olbermann on down. You know, come on, you didn't have access to this tape. You're relying on law enforcement as your only source. It seems pretty obvious that if Goodell and his team did their due diligence, that they would have been able to get that tape that came out, right? And that seems to be the hot button because this police officer said, I sent it, I can show you the FedEx tracking or the whatever for it, and I have a voicemail from somebody in the league office that got it. Now, how would that person not say, hey, boss, you better take a look at this. It's really bad, it's really shocking, but you better take a look at it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's opinion. Did he see it? I mean, you can play with that all day, but I'm surprised no one has been fired yet over this.
Yeah, and as bad as the handling was for the Ray Rice incident, we have the Adrian Peterson thing, which appears to, at least from the sponsorship perspective, pushed it just over the edge. I mean, now you have Budweiser, Nike, all of a sudden saying, NFL, come on, get your act together. I can't remember seeing anything like that before in all the years I've been watching this stuff.
Yeah, you just said it right there. If beer has a problem with football, and football and beer are like the best friends, if there's a problem from the beer standpoint, which a ton of revenue comes from that, from the TVs, and then you drill it all the way down to your average guy going out for a Sunday afternoon with his friends to the bar. And now people are associating beer as not being happy with the NFL. It's getting really bad.
You are a famous auctioneer. If a
Here in Canada, just not world famous yet, just semi-North American famous.
If some professional athlete comes to you now that potentially has been caught up in some type of slew of events that has transpired thus far, do you take on that auction?
If it's Adrian Peterson, I don't think the smart move for Adrian Peterson right now is to host a public event, black tie affair, and get up there and speak to people about charitable issues. But the idea is that when someone becomes famous and they're making a lot of money, they want to give back. And that's a very altruistic thing. But then it's, what is your charity going to do? How often are you going to be able to host these events with your busy schedule as an active professional athlete?
Right.
And then on top of that, who's running it for you? A lot of times you'll always see the New York Post or somebody come out with, here's the list of athletes who raise millions of dollars for their own charities, the whoever foundation. And then you see how much money actually gets to the charity in the end of the day. Sometimes people hire family members, or they just like, man, I just want to have my name on something because I feel I'm famous, or I have my name on something because I didn't want to be bugged by every other charity out there to do something. I could just say, sorry, I can't help you. I have to worry about my own foundation. And there's so many good ones, but then it's you always hear about the the one or two bad organizations where the athlete's name is on the thing and they raised $1 million and $3,000 gets to a charity or something. That's when things go really bad.
Right.
Do you think, it's interesting you brought up the whole idea of, this is all about public perception at the end of the day. Do you think that these stories are ultimately going to be something that the public associates with people who play professional football? Is it going to be something that sticks to professional athletes? Is it going to be about professional sports in general? Is this going to open up an opportunity from a competitiveness standpoint for other leagues to kind of hone in on being the go-to sport for the American public?
Well, it's a good point. And you look at baseball, right? Baseball went through this steroid problem and they are cleaning it up. But baseball's going to go through a rough time. You look at the attendance of some of these games. The Mets the other day had something like 23,000 tickets. You can put 50,000 people in there. And if the Yankees started having that problem, then we'd really be worrying. But when you're watching a Yankee game on TV a lot, you see all those empty seats in the background. Sometimes that's because people bought the premium seats and they don't want to just give them away to other people, and they paid so much for them. But baseball has a big problem right now. Football has a massive image problem. And this image problem didn't happen in the offseason. It's happening as they're kicking off.
Yeah.
And then you even have Rihanna coming out. There was CBS pulled the opening song, and Rihanna's coming out and blasting them, and people are having Rihanna's back on this.
It's a real mess, and I'm wondering if this is going to start to open up opportunities for other leagues, be it the NBA or perhaps MLS.
I think baseball's problem is that a lot of times people don't assimilate with those superstars anymore. There's no young up-and-coming guys that people are like, I want to be like that. I don't think baseball's in a position like Derek Jeter's on his back end.
Yeah.
He's almost done.
There's an interesting
So I
problem
think
there.
that now, I think to your point,
Yeah.
no one wants to come out because no one can relate to the players.
Yeah, you got a guy like Mike Trout, who's one of the most exciting players in baseball. But outside of Mike Trout, it takes a while to find a name, to even think of a name like a Derek Jeter that really brings the people out there. From a memorabilia side of things, I mean, whose jersey do you want signed right now? And
I don't know.
yeah.
No, they have an issue there. Pat, really interesting stuff. Thank you so much for stopping by and unpacking this for us.
My pleasure. Thanks, guys.
If you'd like to see more of the stuff that we're working on, be sure to go check us out on mimesiswebtv.com. You can also follow us on YouTube, and of course, you can always follow us on Twitter. I'm Lee Pacchia. Thanks for watching.